Get out of this lake right now. You have no right to fish here. That was the first thing out of Vivian Blackwater's mouth, finger in my face, voice slicing the cool morning air like a rusty blade. Behind her, 4 more HOA cronies, arms crossed, faces puckered up with the kind of smug satisfaction you only see on people who are dead certain they've won before the game's even started. I didn't answer her. Not right away. I just let her words drop onto that perfectly still water, watch the ripples vanish. Then, slow as sunrise, I reached into my jacket. That paper in my hands. You'd have thought I pulled out a rattlesnake. Vivian's face turned white as a church candle. How do you have that? She stammered, voice cracking. I swear you've never seen fake power crumble so fast in your life. You ever witness an entire system of bullies realize they've messed with the wrong guy? Let me know where you're listening from, because this one's for anybody who's ever watched a bunch of folks drunk on HOA power try to rewrite reality to suit themselves. The morning was all steam off my coffee and the soft scent of honeysuckle from the bushes by the shore, koi fish. Gliding lazy circles, sunlight bouncing off golden scales, that old legend of a fish 25 years old and worth more than my truck. Those koi weren't just fish, not to me, each one a living trust, handed down from men who'd served together, survived the world turning upside down. I promised myself I'd never let some HOA tyrant like Vivian screw that up, not while I still drew breath. Vivian stood there, all Lululemon and fake confidence, president of the association for 3 years running. I'd watched her kinda 100 times before people who think power over mailbox paint colors and hedge heights turns them into generals. Her backup singers nodded along Tom Bradley, always eager to please whatever queen bee buzzed loudest. Susan Morris, ex-teacher, still scolding grown adults. Robert Chen, whose whole life ran on spreadsheets. And Marcus Williams, too new to realize how deep the swamp really ran. Mr. Harper, Vivian squawked, I'm waiting for an answer. I just set down my mug on the old wooden table I built with my own hands right in that spot I've loved for 15 years. Tackle box open lures lined up like a marine inspection. Everything with a purpose. Mrs. Blackwater, I said, voice calm as a lake before a storm, you seem awfully confident about property rights this morning. That's when she made her first real mistake, mistaking restraint for weakness. Folks like her, they never learn until the bill comes due. She straightened up, told me she'd done her research, waved around talk of community property, and how the original Millbrook development gave all residents equal rights to the lake. Her followers murmured approval, thinking they'd finally caught the old veteran in some legal trap. But see, they'd done what amateurs always do, stopped at the surface, never asked what's underneath. They had no idea I'd been waiting for this, watching them plot and whisper, counting the cars that circled my street, watching a black sedan with out-of-state plates and a suit inside who didn't belong anywhere near Millbrook. That wasn't county business. That was developer money sniffing for a weak link. So I held up my document, old cream-colored Department of Agriculture letterhead, dated September 15th, 1943, seals and signatures. Nobody forges, least of all HOA hobbyists. Exclusive fishing and lake management right certificate. I read granted to the Harper family in perpetuity for services rendered during the national food production emergency of 1942 to 1945. You could have heard a pin drop. Vivian's mouth opened and shut like a beached bass. The birds even stopped singing. That's impossible, she croaked. But the words fell flat. I kept reading rights that included complete authority over fishing, aquaculture, water quality, and strict prohibition of access without my say-so. Not a fishing permit, a declaration of legal sovereignty. Marcus Williams tried to rally, maybe it's not valid, maybe old laws don't count. Does the Constitution expire because it's old, Marcus? I asked, not unkind. You think federal law's like a jug of milk? He flushed because everybody knows the answer. Grandfathered rights don't evaporate just because they inconvenience a few would-be suburban kings and queens. Vivian dug for loopholes, talking statutes of limitations, modern codes, but the crowd behind her had lost their taste for revolution. Tom shuffled off Susan, following with her teacher's dignity, and even Robert and Marcus looked like they wanted a do-over. I folded my document, put it away. You might want to look up the penalties for interfering with federally protected property under the Resource Conservation Act. $10,000 a pop, and that's just for starters. You could see Marcus doing the math, 50 grand split 5 ways and not a group discount in sight. But what none of them knew, what nobody understood, was the real story. My grandfather, Thomas Harper, had been a hydraulic engineer before the war, built water management systems that fed whole towns. The government came calling in, 42, asked him to help feed the country. And when it was over, Congress wrote protections into law for the families who answered. That lake out back isn't just a pond for decoration, it's a linchpin filtering and feeding water to thousands of people, koi serving as living test kits for contamination. When the developer Charles Morrison started circling hiring private eyes funding community fairness flyers, I knew the war was just warming up. Social media campaigns popped up overnight. Reclaim Our Lake groups with fancy graphics, pretending this was all about community resources, not one rich guy's scheme to force a sale. Even the local reporter, Emily Brooks, got pulled in writing up the HOA side until she started asking the wrong questions and found her editor was pocketing developer cash. But here's where the twist hit. This wasn't just HOA games. Morrison's goons crossed the line in the night, 2 guys with industrial toxin and herbicide paid for with Shell company money. Their plan: poison the lake, kill my fish, ruin the water, and pin it on me. What they didn't know, couldn't have known, was that my lake wasn't isolated. It was part of a system feeding clean water to thousands, including the local hospital and school. Next morning, I found golden belly up, pearl crimson azure, and ruby gone. $50,000 worth of fish, but that wasn't the worst of it. Kids at the school started puking, convulsing, 17 in the ER before noon. 67 people poisoned in all. One of the sickest, Dr. Margaret Blackwater, Vivian's own sister, chief ER doc, who drank more water on her night shift than anyone else. That disaster turned local drama into a full-blown federal case. The EPA showed up with hazmat suits. The FBI got called for domestic terrorism. Earl Thompson, the HOA's own security guard, handed over phone recordings Vivian herself caught saying, "Just make the lake unusable." Margaret woke up in ICU, realized she'd been poisoned on her sister's orders, and cut Vivian from her life for good. The courtroom was packed. Judge Morrison presiding, media everywhere. Emily Brooks flipped, exposed the developer, the bribed officials, the fake grassroots campaigns. Margaret testified her own sister tried to kill her and half the town for a land grab. Earl's tapes played for the jury, Vivian's voice cold and damning. It took less than 2 hours, guilty all charges. Morrison 25 years federal, Vivian 15 years. Restitution in the millions, my rights forever protected by court order. The community cheered on the courthouse steps, and the FBI launched Operation Lake Grab, busting similar rings in a dozen states. The story blew up on national news. Suddenly everybody cared about property rights and HOA corruption. When it was all over, Governor Richardson came down in person, released a statement, then handed me 5 new Koi Hope: Justice, Courage, Wisdom, Friendship. The community rallied fundraisers, environmental engineers, even those who once doubted. We rebuilt the lake together. The scars are still there, but every time I see school kids learning about water conservation by my shore, or Maria Rodriguez's little girl helping me feed the fish, I remember sometimes justice shows up right when you think hope's run dry. I still get the odd look from the handful of diehards who think federal law is the enemy. But most folks know the truth now. Margaret runs community health talks. Emily's reporting won awards for exposing the scam. The Veterans Property Protection Act passed Congress. My little fight turned into a shield for thousands. I sit here now, coffee steaming, five koi, glinting in the morning sun. No longer just a caretaker, but a witness to the kind of resilience and unity that only comes when a community faces the worst and comes out the other side wiser and stronger. Funny thing, none of it started with big speeches, just with saying no when it mattered. Sometimes the hardest fights don't need fists, just patience, backbone, and the willingness to stand up for what's right, even when you stand alone. So let me ask, have you ever had to defend what's rightfully yours, even when the odds were stacked against you? Drop your story in the comments. Let's hear where you're from. Because justice, real justice, isn't just about one man keeping his lake. It's about all of us holding the line for the next generation. And if you believe that matters, stick around for more. Sometimes the coldest justice is the kind served up by a whole community standing together when it counts.